It began with a whisper behind closed doors. A fight between two lovers in a cramped Illinois apartment. He said she lied. She said he threatened her. But only one of them was believed. And the other disappeared behind prison walls for 15 years. This isn't just a story about crime. It's a story about time. About what it takes from a man, and what's left behind when it finally lets him go. Lance Darnell Martin was just 23 years old when he was sentenced to the kind of punishment that doesn't just lock the body, it locks the mind. Stripped of freedom, abandoned by the system, and accused by the woman he loved, he sat in silence while the rest of the world moved on. And she did move on. Nicole Ramsey, the woman who pointed the finger, went on to finish nursing school. She posted smiling photos. She built a new life. She even found new love, with Alicia Montgomery, a respected hairstylist in Springfield. And together they shared a home, a business, a dog, and a future. But in the shadows of that new life, someone was watching. Someone who remembered every detail. Someone who waited. Someone who never forgot. On the night of September 3, 2018, that silence finally broke. In the span of just 15 minutes, a decade and a half of buried rage was released. 2 women were found dead, each with a single gunshot to the head. No signs of forced entry. No robbery. No mercy. When police tracked him down, Lance Martin didn't run. He didn't beg. He didn't deny it. He only said 7 words. Words that still haunt investigators, the families, and anyone who ever believed prison could change a man. She took 15 years from me. I gave her 15 minutes. Tonight, we're going to walk through every piece of it. From the night he was arrested to the day he came home. From the lies that sent him away, to the revenge that brought him back. Who was telling the truth? Who paid the price? And could any of it have been stopped? This is not a story of second chances. It is a story of what happens when pain is left unchecked, when justice moves too fast, and when the past walks straight through the front door. This is the case of Lance Martin, Nicole Ramsey, Alicia Montgomery, and the decision that turned a man into a killer. Peoria, Illinois, summer of 2003. A quiet city tucked in the heart of the Midwest. Not the kind of place that makes national headlines. Not the kind of place you'd expect to become the backdrop of a tragedy. Lance Darnell Martin was 23 years old. A warehouse worker, tall and soft-spoken. He wasn't on anyone's radar. He clocked in, kept to himself, paid his rent, and stayed mostly out of trouble. His juvenile record had been sealed. He had no violent felonies. He wasn't in a gang. He wasn't making waves. Just another young man trying to find his place in a city that often didn't care if you did or didn't. That summer, Lance was living in a modest apartment on the city's south side, in and out of a relationship that everyone around him described the same way, toxic. Her name was Nicole Ramsey. She was 21, a nursing student at the time. She was ambitious, bright, but also intense, moody. And when things got heated, they got loud. Neighbors would later tell police that the couple's arguments were frequent. Doors slamming. Screaming matches that spilled out into the hallways. One woman said, quote, "You could tell they loved each other, but it was a bad kind of love. Like fire with gasoline." Nicole had a habit of calling the police during their fights. Sometimes she accused Lance of threatening her. Sometimes she said he pushed her. But she rarely pressed charges. And every time Lance cooperated. Officers would show up, talk it down, and leave. No arrests. No weapons. No injuries. Until August 15th. That day, Nicole made a call that changed everything. She told dispatchers that Lance had assaulted her during an argument about another woman. She said he grabbed her by the arms, screamed in her face, and wouldn't let her leave. She told the responding officers she feared for her life. But Nicole didn't stop there. When officers asked if Lance had any weapons, she made a new claim, one that would flip the entire situation on its head. She said Lance had hidden guns in her apartment. That he was part of a robbery crew. That he had bragged about illegal activities. And then, almost like a scene from a script, she walked them into her closet and pointed to a shoebox. Inside was a handgun. Unregistered. Loaded. According to the arresting officers, Nicole was cooperative. Her story was taken at face value. Lance, meanwhile, was already in cuffs before he could say a word. At the police station, things moved fast. Too fast. Lance was charged with aggravated assault and unlawful possession of a firearm by a felon. A charge triggered not by a recent offense, but by a juvenile conviction from years earlier. One he thought was behind him. The legal system gave him a public defender who barely knew his name. According to later filings, the attorney never called a single witness. Never pushed to test the gun for fingerprints. Never questioned Nicole's sudden cooperation. The fact that Nicole had made previous calls but never mentioned firearms? Ignored. The claim that Lance was part of a robbery crew? Not investigated. The closet where the gun was found? Never dusted for prints. Nicole's word became the case. No physical evidence. No corroborating witness. Just her statement and the gun. Faced with a choice between trial and a plea deal, Lance took what seemed like the only way out. He pleaded guilty. In exchange for dropping some of the charges, the state gave him 15 years in prison. 15 years. On the word of one woman. He entered Menard Correctional Center on a gray morning in September 2003. No press. No protest. Just another name in the system. Most people who knew the couple thought it was just another messy breakup. A relationship that went too far. He had done something. She reacted. And that was that. But they didn't know what Lance knew. They didn't know what was sitting in his head as he watched the years slip away. Because for him this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. It all seemed like a petty breakup, until you look at what happened 15 years later. Menard Correctional Center is not known for rehabilitation. It's known for its walls. Its silence. Its rules. A place where time doesn't move forward. Just waits. Day after day, year after year. This is where Lance Martin would spend the next 5,579 days. When he arrived, he was angry, but still hopeful. He believed someone would listen. That the truth would eventually surface. That a judge or a lawyer or even Nicole herself might come forward and say, "We got it wrong." So he wrote. And wrote. And kept writing. Headphone sound. Shuffling of envelopes, a prison stamp thudding down, pen scratching paper slowly. Letters to the Illinois Innocence Project. To legal clinics. To civil rights groups. Dozens. Hundreds. All handwritten. Each one a plea, a declaration, a demand to be seen. And in every envelope, a version of the same message. I was set up. I was framed. She lied. But the replies, when they came at all, were always the same. No new evidence. No DNA. No witnesses. Nothing to appeal. And without that, the door stayed shut. Over time, Lance began to change. The man who once talked freely with cellmates stopped speaking. He became quiet. Isolated. Focused. He filled notebooks with timelines and names. He memorized legal codes. He reread his case files until he could recite them word for word. Cellmates would later describe him as detached, cold, obsessed. But he never stopped thinking about Nicole. Inside his locker, Lance kept what some would call a shrine. A thick, disorganized scrapbook filled with printed screenshots from Facebook, Twitter, and eventually Instagram. Nicole's posts. Her selfies. Her nights out. Captions about classes, concerts, birthdays. He even tracked who liked her posts. Who commented. What they said. Prison doesn't have internet. But letters do. Visits do. Friends on the outside became his eyes. And he watched her life unfold, from the inside of a cage. In 2012, the updates stopped being just about Nicole. That year, Lance learned something new. Something that didn't just hurt, but humiliated him. Nicole had come out as gay. And more than that, she had fallen in love again. Her name was Alicia Montgomery. A well-known hairstylist in Springfield. Respected in her community. Outspoken. Proud. The kind of woman whose business had a wait list. The kind of woman who stood tall with confidence Nicole had never shown when she was with Lance. By 2014, the two were living together. By 2016, they had opened a small salon business. By 2017, they were married. Their wedding photos showed a happy couple, Nicole in a white suit, Alicia holding her close. Friends clapping. Champagne. Laughter. To the outside world, it was just a celebration. To Lance, it was something else. Proof that the woman who he claimed destroyed his life had built one of her own. Without consequences. Without apology. Without even acknowledging what had happened. In one photo, Nicole stood smiling beneath a neon sign that read, "No regrets." That image, Lance reportedly stared at for hours. What Nicole saw as a moment of freedom, he saw as a confession. Not of guilt, but of indifference. To him, she had erased what happened. Moved on. Buried the past under hair dye, happy selfies, and curated hashtags. But he couldn't bury it. Not in a prison cell. Not with 15 years of silence ringing in his ears. He couldn't say her name aloud, but he traced it every day in writing. Over and over. Nicole. Alicia. Nicole. Alicia. Their life was public now. Their joy was visible. Lance knew the dog's name. He knew the street they lived on. He even knew what Alicia liked to cook, based on a video Nicole posted showing them laughing in a kitchen, stirring pasta, sipping wine, background music, all smiles. Behind the walls of Menard, those details became fuel. To Lance Martin, this wasn't just betrayal. It was erasure. It was mockery. It was the world applauding the woman he claimed had lied, and ignoring the man who said he paid for it. It wasn't just rage. It was humiliation. Public, permanent, and unpunished. June 7, 2018. The gate at Menard Correctional Center slides open at exactly 9:06 a.m. A man steps through it with a single duffel bag. No crowd. No family. No words. Just 15 years behind him and something unfinished ahead. Lance Martin was now 38 years old. He had spent nearly half his life in prison. But he walked out that morning without a cane, without a limp, without any sign of physical weakness. In every step there was still control. And something else, restraint. According to Department of Corrections records, Lance was compliant from day one. He checked into a halfway house in West Chicago. He attended his parole meetings on time. He submitted job applications. He stayed quiet. His parole officer described him as polite, calm. No red flags. No aggression. No issues. But what the paperwork didn't show was that Lance hadn't come back to rebuild a life. He came back to correct a story. From the very first night he was back online, using shared computers, borrowing phones, logging into accounts he'd memorized passwords for years earlier. Nicole's life, so long watched from inside, was now right in front of him. He didn't post. He didn't comment. He just watched. Through mutual friends and tagged locations he found what he needed. Nicole and Alicia had moved into a duplex in a quiet corner of Springfield in the Oak Ridge neighborhood. They shared the unit with their French bulldog Jules. Their business, Montgomery and Ramsey Hair Studio, was thriving. They posted updates about new clients, new equipment, product lines. They ran Instagram promos, Facebook videos, even TikTok content showing hair transformations with upbeat music. And there she was, Nicole Ramsey, laughing, kissing Alicia on camera, dancing in a salon apron with dye-stained gloves. Her life didn't just survive what happened in 2003, it appeared untouched by it. Lance began compiling, collecting addresses, rental car agencies, gas stations along the route. He mapped the drive from Chicago to Springfield multiple times. He used satellite images to identify exits, surveillance blind spots, neighborhood layouts. On August 29, 2018, Lance Martin rented a black Nissan Altima under his real name using a debit card tied to his halfway house stipend. The same day he purchased a burner phone at a gas station off I-55. He made the drive in just under 3 hours. He checked into a budget motel on the outskirts of Springfield. Paid cash. No ID required. From his window he could see the local strip mall, a tire repair shop, and 3 blocks over, the edge of the Oak Ridge subdivision. Over the next 2 days he didn't make contact. He didn't knock on any doors. He didn't call anyone. He just watched. He parked down the block from their home, recorded their comings and goings, tracked when they walked the dog, when they left for the salon, when deliveries were made. He noted the lack of cameras on the street. He knew when the sun hit the front door, and when the lights inside came on. From his motel room he could hear children playing. Lawnmowers. Ice cream trucks. A normal neighborhood. A safe one. No one was watching the man parked in a rental car. No one was watching the man who had already spent 15 years preparing for this week. On the morning of September 3rd, he checked out of the motel. Returned briefly to the halfway house in Chicago for his final check-in. Said nothing. Smiled when greeted. That afternoon he drove back to Springfield. Arrived at the Oak Ridge duplex shortly after 8 p.m. He had watched her online for years. Now he was watching her for real. September 3, 2018. Labor Day. For most people in the Oak Ridge neighborhood, it was a quiet Monday night, warm, uneventful, just the fading echo of summer. But for Nicole Ramsey and Alicia Harmon, it was the night everything came crashing in. 8:15 p.m. Lance Martin parks the rented black Nissan a short walk from the duplex. He's wearing all black. Gloves. A jacket zipped just a little too tight for the weather. In his jacket is a .38 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver, unregistered, untraceable. In his mind, he's walked through this moment 1,000 times. But this is the first time it's real. He walks toward the home. He doesn't run. He doesn't sneak. He walks. Calm. Purposeful. Deliberate. No hesitation. Nicole opens the door. There's a pause just a second too long. She doesn't scream. She doesn't run. She just stares. She recognizes him instantly. She doesn't look afraid. According to his later confession, that look, that single look, is what broke something inside him. She looked smug, he told detectives. Like she got away with everything. That's when I snapped. From inside the house, Alicia's voice cuts through. Nicole, who is it? A few seconds later, she's by the door, and immediately knows something is wrong. Call the cops. She yells, reaching for her phone. That's when Lance pulls the gun. He fires twice. The first shot hits Nicole in the chest. She collapses backward, still half in the doorway. The second hits Alicia in the shoulder as she lunges toward him. But Alicia doesn't go down easy. She fights. Plus, kicks, scratches. She manages to grab the barrel of the gun with both hands. Lance fires again, this time point blank. 8:40 p.m. A neighbor across the street hears what she thinks are fireworks, loud, sharp bangs. But when the barking doesn't stop, she steps outside and sees movement. A figure walking calmly down the sidewalk, disappearing into the night. She calls 911. When officers arrive, they find the front door ajar. Inside, the lights are still on. Music still plays faintly from a speaker in the back room. Nicole Ramsey is found near the threshold. Single gunshot wound to the chest. Alicia Harmon is further inside near the couch. 2 shots, one to the shoulder, one to the head. Her hands show deep bruising. Defensive wounds. She fought until the end. The French bulldog Jules is unharmed. Still sitting beside Nicole's body when responders enter. Nothing in the house is stolen. Nothing is disturbed. The TV is untouched. The salon equipment in the garage remains where it was. This wasn't a robbery. It was an execution. Surveillance footage from a neighbor's Ring doorbell shows only a partial figure, dark clothing, blurred face. But what's chilling is the demeanor. The figure doesn't run. Doesn't panic. He walks away like someone finishing a task. Like it was never a question of if, only, when. Lance Martin wouldn't be caught for 72 more hours. But that night, he vanished like a ghost. And for the first time in 15 years, Nicole Ramsey was finally silent. In the hours after the murders, the Oak Ridge Police Department had no name, no license plate, no suspect. Just 2 bodies, a shaken neighborhood, and grainy footage of a man walking calmly away into the darkness. But Lance Martin hadn't just vanished. He left breadcrumbs. And the storm he unleashed hadn't yet passed. For the first 24 hours, investigators retraced Nicole and Alicia's last moments. Who they talked to, who they saw, who might have had a motive. It didn't take long before someone mentioned a name. There was a guy from her past. Lance something. She said he did time for her. That was all they needed. By 48 hours, detectives had dug through old court records and found the connection. Lance Martin. Convicted 2003. Released July 2018. Less than 2 months earlier. But Lance was already on the move. He'd crossed 2 state lines, driving east through Illinois and into Indiana, using back roads and avoiding major interstates. What he didn't know, or didn't care about, was the phone in his glove box. The rented car had been flagged. Traffic cameras in Danville picked it up early Tuesday morning. Then again in Terre Haute, 90 miles east. Meanwhile, his prepaid burner phone had pinged off towers every 50 miles. They had a direction. They had a pattern. Now they just had to wait. On September 7th, 4 days after the double homicide, police in Bloomington, Indiana, initiated a felony traffic stop on a vehicle parked at a Motel 6. The man behind the wheel fit the description. Tall, stocky, shaved head, calm. He didn't resist. Didn't speak. He raised his hands, stepped out, and let them cuff him without a word. When they asked his name, he said, "Lance. I figured you'd come." Inside the interrogation room, back in Tennessee, the news broke within the hour. Nicole Ramsey's killer had been caught. But in the interrogation room, what came next stunned even the most seasoned detectives. "Detective Calm, tell us what happened, Lance." "Lance, quietly, she took 15 years from me. I gave her 15 minutes. Lance Martin didn't lawyer up. Didn't ask for a deal. He laid it all out, step by step. How he'd waited. Watched. Tracked Nicole's social media. Followed her routines. How he'd seen photos of her and Alicia living their best lives, traveling, opening a hair salon, smiling like nothing had ever happened. And how, in his mind, it became unbearable. He said it wasn't a sudden rage. It was a slow brewing storm. One that built over the years, each birthday in prison, each unopened letter, each rumor about her new life while he sat in a concrete box. She used me, set me up, laughed behind my back. She knew exactly what she was doing. And she got away with it. Detectives pressed him on why he also killed Alicia Harmon, Nicole's new partner, who had nothing to do with the past. She was in the way. Wrong place, wrong time. But investigators weren't sure. Alicia had tried to fight. The autopsy showed deep defensive wounds. Lance admitted she came at him. She was a fighter, he said. But I didn't come there to leave witnesses. His mugshot was released that evening. In it, Lance stares straight ahead, jaw locked, face unreadable. Not proud. Not ashamed. Just done. Across the state, Nicole's family watched the press conference in silence. Her sister reportedly broke down when the confession was read aloud. And Alicia's parents, who had just buried their daughter, sat in stunned grief. We didn't even know who he was, her mother said. Now we can't forget him. The arrest brought closure, but not relief. Because this wasn't a random act of violence. This wasn't a drunken rage or a robbery gone wrong. It was revenge. Slow. Calculated. Unrelenting. A man sat in prison for 15 years, obsessed with one woman. And when he came out, he didn't try to move on. He tried to make her pay. It wasn't just about Nicole. It was about time, power, control. And in his twisted sense of justice, he'd even the score. Lance recorded 15 years. I waited. Watched. She thought she got away. But time has a way of catching up. But what Lance never understood is that no one really wins in revenge. Especially when the debt is paid in blood. By the time Lance Martin stood before a judge again, the nation was watching. His face, once forgotten by the criminal justice system, was now plastered across headlines from Peoria to New York. This time, the man who had once been silenced was about to speak, only no one would forget what he had to say. September 2020. Sangamon County Courthouse. Lance Martin appeared in court for the murders of Nicole Ramsey and Alicia Montgomery. Shackled and wearing a beige jumpsuit, he showed little emotion as the prosecution laid out the timeline with brutal precision. The courtroom was packed. Family, friends, reporters. All there for answers. For closure. Maybe even revenge of their own. The charges were severe. 2 counts of first-degree murder, unlawful use of a weapon, and armed home invasion. Prosecutors argued premeditation, citing Lance's social media stalking, his travel records, and the calm, calculated way he executed the killings. The defense team tried to argue diminished capacity, claiming 15 years of incarceration, betrayal, and untreated mental health issues had left Lance unstable, unable to form intent. The judge didn't buy it. And neither did the jury. The prosecution presented the chilling confession tape. Lance's voice cold, almost detached. She took 15 years from me. I gave her 15 minutes. I didn't raise my voice. I just pulled the trigger. They presented surveillance footage. Lance's black Nissan driving past the duplex minutes before the shooting. His calm walk away afterward. The crime scene photos. The autopsy reports. The bullet trajectory analysis. The dog, untouched, whimpering beside Alicia's body. Then came the victim impact statements. Alicia's sister broke down on the stand. She was light. That's the only word. Alicia lit up every room, every salon she walked into. And Nicole? She was broken, but she was trying to heal. He didn't just kill them. He punished them. A former classmate of Nicole spoke too, tearfully, admitting their friendship had ended in college after Nicole falsely accused someone else of theft. She had demons. But she didn't deserve this. No one deserves to die this way. The jury deliberated for just 6 hours. Unanimous, guilty on all charges. October 2020. The judge delivered the sentence. Lance Martin, this court finds you guilty of the premeditated murders of Nicole Ramsey and Alicia Montgomery. You are hereby sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. May the weight of your actions rest with you for the remainder of your days. Lance showed no visible reaction. He didn't look at the victims' families. Didn't say a word in his own defense. Just stared forward, eyes locked like he was somewhere else entirely. What are we supposed to make of this story? A man rotting in prison for a crime he claimed he didn't commit. A woman who may have lied, then moved on and rebuilt her life. And a final act of violence so cold, so deliberate, it felt less like revenge and more like an execution. Was Lance Martin a victim of injustice, or a man consumed by vengeance? Was this preventable, or inevitable? There were no appeals filed. No further statements issued by Lance. The scrapbook of Nicole's photos found in his cell remains in police evidence, alongside the journal entries and timelines he kept for years. A quiet, terrifying testament to what happens when someone's mind becomes a locked room, filled only with obsession. Nicole and Alicia were buried side by side in a Springfield cemetery. Their families still gather each year at the duplex steps to light candles. The French bulldog? Adopted by Alicia's cousin. Still alive. Still waiting at the door sometimes. In the end, the voice returns, this wasn't about justice. It wasn't even about closure. It was about time. Time stolen, time served, and time used to plot something irreversible. Because sometimes the past doesn't stay in prison. It comes home. Do you believe Nicole's original accusation should have been investigated more deeply? Should false charges carry stiffer penalties if they lead to wrongful incarceration? Was Lance ever truly a free man once that cell door closed, or had the damage already been done? If you found this story disturbing, thought-provoking, or just hard to forget, hit that like button. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And subscribe because we bring you the deepest, most human side of true crime every week. No fluff. Just raw stories.